The night was silent, except for the sound of a woman's old shoes hitting the pavement. This is a story about a secret that could change everything. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel and make sure you watch until the very last second. You won't want to miss how this ends. The streetlights flickered over the broken body of a man lying in the dirt. He was wearing a suit that cost more than a house, but it was torn and soaked in blood. He had been beaten by men who wanted his empire, then tossed out of a moving car like trash. Clara was walking home from her double shift at the diner when she saw his hand move. Most people in this neighborhood would have kept walking to stay safe. Clara knelt down, wiped the blood from his face, and felt a faint pulse. She didn't see a billionaire. She saw a human being who was dying. She dragged him to her small one-bedroom apartment. It took every bit of her strength to get him onto her faded couch. She spent the entire night cleaning his wounds with warm water and cheap bandages. She didn't have money for a hospital, and he didn't have an ID in his pockets. While he slept, she stayed awake, watching his chest rise and fall. He looked like someone who had never known a hard day in his life, yet here he was, broken on her floor. She wondered who would do this to him. When he finally opened his eyes, he saw a ceiling with water stains and a woman eating a piece of dry toast. His memory flooded back, the betrayal by his board of directors, the kidnapping, the cold laughter of his enemies. He looked at Clara and saw the kindness in her tired eyes. He realized that if he went back now, they would finish the job. He also realized that for the first time in 10 years, someone was looking at him without wanting his money. He decided right then to stay hidden and see who he could really trust. Clara asked him his name. He hesitated, then gave her a fake one. Caleb. He told her he was just a drifter who got caught in a bad fight with some debt collectors. Clara didn't ask too many questions. She knew what it was like to be hunted by bad luck. She told him he could stay until he could walk again. She shared her meager dinner of canned soup with him. He had eaten at 5-star restaurants his whole life, but this soup tasted better than anything he'd ever had. It was the taste of someone caring for him for no reason at all. As the days passed, Caleb watched Clara's life. She worked 16 hours a day just to pay for a tiny apartment. She wore coats with holes in the elbows and skipped meals so she could buy medicine for her neighbor's sick cat. He felt a deep shame. He had millions in his bank account, yet he was watching a saint struggle for pennies. He wanted to call his assistant and buy the whole building for her, but he knew the moment he used his real name, the danger would follow him to her door and put her in the crosshairs. He started helping around the house to earn his keep. He fixed her broken chair, oiled the squeaky door, and scrubbed the floors until they shone. His hands, once soft from office work, began to get calluses and scars. He liked the work. He liked the way Clara laughed when he told a joke. She told him about her dreams of opening a small bakery, and how she had been saving $5 a week for 10 years. It would take her a lifetime to reach her goal. Caleb listened, his heart aching because he could make her dream come true with a single phone call. One evening, they sat on the fire escape watching the sunset over the jagged city skyline. The tension between them grew. It wasn't just gratitude, it was something deeper. Caleb looked at her and almost told her the truth. He wanted to tell her he was the man on the news, the CEO of the world's largest tech firm. But then he saw how happy she was just sharing a cheap soda with Caleb the drifter. He realized he loved her, and he feared that the truth would ruin the only real thing he had ever felt in his entire life. The peace didn't last long. In the city center, the men who tried to kill him were getting nervous. They hadn't found a body, and they knew that as long as he was alive, their corporate takeover was illegal. They began searching the poor districts, pushing people around and showing his photo to every homeless person they found. Back at the apartment, Caleb saw a black SUV drive slowly down the street. He pulled Clara away from the window, his heart racing. He told her he was just worried about the bad men, who beat him up coming back for a second round. Clara noticed Caleb was changing. He was stronger now, and his eyes had a command in them that didn't fit a drifter. She found him one day staring at a newspaper article about his own disappearance. He quickly hid it, but she saw the look of intense focus on his face. She started to wonder if he was a criminal on the run or a witness to a terrible crime. She was scared, but she couldn't bring herself to kick him out. He had become her shadow, her protector, and the only person she truly trusted. To keep her safe, Caleb began teaching her how to defend herself. He showed her how to be aware of her surroundings and how to strike a man's pressure points. They spent hours in the small living room, moving together in a dance of survival. The closeness was electric. Every time his hand touched hers to correct her stance, the air became heavy. He wanted to kiss her, but he felt like a liar. He was a prince pretending to be a pauper, and every day the lie grew heavier and more painful to carry. One night, a local debt collector came to Clara's door. She owed money for her late mother's medical bills. The man was rude and pushed his way inside, threatening to take her furniture. Before he could lay a hand on Clara, Caleb was there. The poor guy moved with the precision of a trained fighter. He didn't use his fists. He used his voice. He spoke with such authority and coldness that the debt collector actually backed away in fear. Clara was stunned. She had never seen that side of him, the side that commanded respect. After the man left, Clara demanded the truth. She asked him how a drifter knew how to talk like a king and stand like a soldier. Caleb made up a story about working as a driver for rich people for many years. He told her he learned how they talked and how they intimidated people just by their presence. Clara wanted to believe him because she was falling in love with him. She hugged him, and Caleb held her tight, swearing to himself that he would protect her from the monsters he had left behind in his old life. Meanwhile, Caleb's secret assistant, the only person he trusted, finally tracked his burner phone signal to the neighborhood. They met in a dark alley behind the diner while Clara was inside working. The assistant begged him to come back, saying the company was falling apart and the stock was crashing. Caleb refused. He said he wasn't ready to put Clara in danger. He told the assistant to start buying up the debt on Clara's apartment building through a shell company. He was using his power in secret to fix her life without her ever knowing. Clara found a brand new winter coat on her bed the next day. Caleb claimed he found it at a thrift store, but it felt like high-end silk and wool. She felt a knot in her stomach. Things weren't adding up. She loved him, but she felt like she was living with a ghost. That night, as they shared a small meal of rice and beans, she told him she didn't care about his past or his secrets, as long as he stayed honest with her from now on. Caleb felt a tear hit his hand. He was a billionaire who had everything, but he realized he would give it all away for this one woman. The villains finally found a solid lead. A local thug reported seeing a man who looked like the CEO hanging around the diner. The black SUVs returned, this time with armed men in suits. Caleb saw them from the diner window while he was waiting for Clara to finish her shift. He knew he had to lead them away before they saw her. He stepped out into the street, letting them see him for a split second before vanishing into the shadows. He led them on a chase through the back alleys, using his knowledge of the city to escape by a hair. When he got back to the apartment, he was out of breath and bleeding from a scrape. He told Clara they had to leave for a few days, calling it a camping trip to get away from the city heat. She knew he was lying, but she trusted him with her life. They went to a small cabin in the woods that Caleb had secretly arranged through his assistant. For 3 days they lived simply. They chopped wood for heat and cooked over an open fire. Away from the city, the masks they wore started to slip away. In the cabin, away from the noise of the world, Caleb finally broke. He told Clara he loved her. He didn't say it with diamonds or fancy cars. He said it while sitting on a dirt floor, tired and hungry. Clara told him she loved him too. They shared a kiss that felt like the world was ending and beginning at the same time. But even in her arms, Caleb was looking at the door. He knew his enemies were close. He knew that by loving her, He had made her the most vulnerable person in the city. The men found the cabin on the fourth day. They arrived at dawn, the sound of heavy engines breaking the silence of the forest. Caleb pushed Clara into a crawlspace under the floorboards. He told her to stay silent no matter what she heard or saw. He stepped outside to face the men who had once been his friends and business partners. They laughed at him, mocking his dirty clothes and his poor life. They held him at gunpoint, demanding the digital keys to his private offshore accounts. Clara watched through a crack in the floor. She saw the man she loved being beaten again. She saw the cold, hard eyes of the men in suits as they kicked him while he was down. She realized then that Caleb wasn't a criminal. He was a victim of something much bigger and more evil. She didn't stay hidden. She found an old hunting rifle in the cabin's closet and stepped out. She didn't know how to use it well, but her hands were steady because she was protecting her home. A brutal fight broke out in the clearing. Clara's shot went wide, but the distraction was all Caleb needed to disarm the lead gunman. He fought like a man with nothing to lose, using every ounce of strength he had regained. Together they managed to drive the men off, but Caleb was badly injured. As he lay in the grass, gasping for air, he looked at Clara. She was holding the rifle, her face covered in soot and tears, looking like a warrior. He realized that she didn't need a billionaire to save her. They couldn't stay in the cabin any longer. They had to move. As they drove back toward the city in a stolen car, the silence was heavy and thick. Clara looked at Caleb and asked the question he had been dreading since the night she found him. Who are those people, and why do they want you so badly? Caleb looked at the skyline of the city, where his name was usually lit up in neon on the tallest tower. He knew the time for lying was over. He told her to turn on the radio. A news report was playing about the missing billionaire. The announcer described the man's business empire and his massive wealth. Clara pulled the car over to the side of the road. She listened to the radio describing Caleb, his real name, his net worth, and his cold reputation in business. She looked at the man sitting next to her. He looked older and deeply sad. He didn't look like a king. He looked like a man who had lost his soul. She felt a wave of anger that burned through her chest. Every moment they spent together, every struggle they shared, felt like a performance to her now. She felt like a toy he was playing with while he was on vacation from his real life. She told him that while she was skipping meals to pay rent, he could have saved her whole neighborhood with a click of his fingers. She told him his poverty was just a game for him, but it was her reality every single day. She felt humiliated that she had pitted a man who owned half the city. Caleb tried to explain. He told her that his money had made him miserable and that she was the only real thing he had ever found. He told her he was going to give it all up to be with her. Clara didn't want to hear it. She felt betrayed. She told him to get out of the car right there on the shoulder of the highway. Caleb stood on the side of the road as she drove away without looking back. He didn't try to stop her. He knew he deserved her anger. Caleb walked back into the city alone. He walked straight into his corporate headquarters, covered in dirt and dried blood. The security guards tried to stop him, but he pushed past them with the authority of a man who owned the air they breathed. He walked into the boardroom where his enemies were celebrating his death. The room went silent as if they had seen a ghost. The dead man had returned, and he looked more dangerous than he had ever been before he was beaten. With the help of his assistant, Caleb spent the next few hours dismantling his enemies. He had recorded their voices at the cabin using a small device. He had proof of their attempted murder and their fraud. By sunset, the police were leading out the men in handcuffs. Caleb sat in his massive leather chair, looking out at the city. He had his empire back, but his office felt like a cold, empty cage. He looked at the phone and wanted to call Clara, but he knew she had blocked his number. Clara went back to her apartment. It felt smaller and colder than it ever had before. She saw the chair Caleb fixed and the floors he scrubbed. She found a small envelope he had hidden under her pillow before they left for the cabin. Inside was not a check for millions, but a hand-drawn picture of the bakery she wanted to open. He had drawn it in perfect detail. He had listened to every word she said. She realized that even if he was a billionaire, the man who cared for her was real. A week passed. Clara was back at the diner, trying to move on with her life. A black limousine pulled up outside, and the entire street stopped to look. A man stepped out wearing a perfectly tailored suit. It was Caleb. He didn't look like the man on the couch anymore. He walked into the diner and sat at the counter. He ordered the same cheap soup he had eaten in the apartment. The other customers stared in silence. Clara walked over, her hands shaking as she held the spoon. He didn't offer her money or a mansion. He looked her in the eye and told her he had officially resigned as CEO. He told her he had put his wealth into a foundation to help the poor neighborhoods of the city. He said he kept just enough to buy an old building down the street, the one she had always pointed out for her bakery. He told her he didn't want to be a billionaire. He just wanted to be the man who helped her bake bread and build a real life. Clara looked at the man in the suit. She saw the scars on his knuckles from the fight at the cabin. She saw the way his eyes softened when she touched his hand. She told him that she didn't want his foundations or his buildings. She wanted the man who knew how she took her coffee and how she felt when she was tired. Caleb smiled and took off his expensive tie, tossing it on the diner floor. He told her he was ready to start from zero with her. The transition wasn't easy for them. The media followed them everywhere for months. People accused Clara of being a gold digger, and they accused Caleb of having a mental breakdown. But they didn't care about the rumors. They worked side by side to renovate the old building. Caleb learned how to carry heavy sacks of flour and how to fix the plumbing. Clara learned how to manage a real business. They were a team in every sense of the word. One night, the men who had been arrested sent a threat to the bakery from prison. Caleb didn't hide it from Clara this time. They sat down together at the kitchen table and made a plan to protect their home. They weren't afraid anymore. They had been through the fire together, and they knew how to survive. They realized that their strength didn't come from a bank account, but from the fact that they trusted each other completely and never kept secrets again. The bakery finally opened on a sunny Saturday morning. It wasn't a fancy place for rich people. It was a place where anyone could get a hot meal, even if they couldn't pay. On the first day, Caleb stood behind the counter, wearing an apron covered in flour. He looked happier than he ever had in a boardroom. Clara watched him from the kitchen, a smile on her face that reached her eyes. They had built something real that no one could take away. As the sun set on their first successful week, Caleb took Clara back to the spot on the road where she had found him. The dirt was still there, but the memory was different now. He told her that being beaten and dumped on that road was the best thing that ever happened to him. It stripped away the lies and showed him who he really was. He knelt down in the dirt, not because he was weak, but because he wanted to ask her to stay with him forever. Clara said yes before he could even finish the question. They didn't need a diamond ring to seal the promise. They had the scars on their hands to prove their loyalty to each other. They walked back to the city together, two people who had found extraordinary love in the most ordinary place. The billionaire was gone and the drifter was gone. There was only Caleb and Clara. The story ends here, but their life is just beginning. If you enjoyed this journey, make sure you leave a comment below telling us your favorite part. Don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Thank you for watching until the very end. We have more stories like this coming soon, so stay tuned.